don't know if that's coming through, but the cat is crashed on the shelf next to me and is sleeping on a blanket and is snoring. And I had to put the microphone on the cat snoring for a second because it was
I could hear
adorable.
it through Zoom,
yeah,
so
okay.
I'm pretty sure it'll come through the recording. We've got cat snoring on tape.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
So you were traveling last week.
Yeah, I was in a different room on a different microphone on a different computer. Everything was different. It was chaos.
On a different internet.
Yeah, you did not have the easiest time understanding me, though the audience in the finished recording will have a fine time because I was doing a local recording on a computer that was good at its job. So there's a lot of you being like, oh no, you're a robot. And I'm just editing all of that out.
Right.
Like,
it doesn't matter to everybody else. Yeah.
Doesn't matter because I sound great for them. But you had a very hard time on the live understanding me. Yeah.
Me and the live audience as well was like, radio, you are. And I got to say, being able to see you and read your lips helped a lot because otherwise I don't think I could have actually understood the robot voice.
Yeah, it was rough. I had multiple meetings on that internet connection and they were all difficult, for sure. So I'm glad to be home. Yeah, I was just doing a thing and now I'm not doing the thing. I get to be home, which is great. Yeah, it is February, so we're tired.
we were talking about how it's sort of the we're still a couple of weeks out from the equinox, so it's still been dark for a long it feels like it's been dark for a long time, and that's always just the hardest time of year for me. So I'm struggling.
Yeah, it's been a lot going on for sure. The other night I hung out with a bunch of people and burned a whole bunch of pallets, but it was raining the whole time. So we were just absolutely soaked in rain, but like steaming because there was a giant bonfire that we could stand next to. And it was just really fun and uncomfortable at the same time.
Isn't most fun just a little uncomfortable?
Not all fun, but yeah, this was some quintessential Oregonian fun where it's like, we don't care that it's dumping rain. We have a giant fire.
We're just going to ignore the rain.
Yeah, just ignore the rain. Like the music equipment was undercover so we could have tunes. And then the power went out, but we had charged Bluetooth speakers, so it was fine. This is partying in the country on a budget.
Whereas for me, I was trying to clip the dog's nails and I cut one too short and he started just bleeding everywhere. I mean, it wasn't too bad. Like once I got never put some baking soda on and stopped the bleeding, but I was just like, oh my God, I've murdered my dog. I'm a bad dog parent. I'm worthless. And I was like, oh wait, I may be suffering from a little bit of seasonal depression. Perhaps. So yeah, looking for the sun to come back out. I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the sun will not be coming out in these chapters.
No.
These chapters are frustrating and demoralizing.
God, it feels like you're trying to travel on a broken road or something.
We have one good thing though.
What?
Before that, patrons.
Yes,
we have people who have given us an affirmation that we are doing good things. So let's give them their shout outs.
The whole reason I am dragging myself out of my depressive hole and being like, hey guys, let's talk, is because I love you guys and the patrons, but the live listeners and of course everyone who listens on the recording as well. Where'd I dump that? I sent it to you, right?
In our private chat.
Private chat, that's right.
Yes, it's the last message. You don't have to scroll up. It's literally the last thing you sent. All right, so that means we're going to start today's thanking with big thanks to Light Blinded Fool, who I recognize from multiple other podcast audiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then Paulina Simmons.
Thank you. Next, we have Dog Boy.
You get to say all the fun names today.
I do.
Did you pick that out at a time?
No, I just took the initiative. Sheer coincidence.
Sheer coincidence. And then, because I need glasses, Marina Brindley. Brindley.
There's a lot of letters in that name. Well, thank you very much to the four of you and to all of our other Patreons. You definitely keep us going, both literally and emotionally.
This is so true. So true. It's amazing what a emotional boost it is to look at the number of people who are supporting us every month and just be like, oh, thank you. That's why I'm like, please just, even if you can give $1 a month, it makes me so happy. Right? Like that people still care about the podcast enough to give and still want to hear what we have to say.
Yeah, it's really nice to scream into the void and have the void cheer back, you know? So yeah, from that bright moment, we now must descend into the depths of whatever the hell is happening in these chapters today.
So, Brandon has a time machine, and he took Perrin and Matt and stuck them in it and put them back to book 1, and then rewrote those characters into these chapters.
This is like, I can't tell if it's completely out of character or if it's just an out of date character sometimes, because it's just so not the character we know. It's so not the character we know.
Not the character that we met in Knife of Dreams, because Knife of Dreams really felt like this character building moment.
Yeah.
And like so many of the characters evolved past what they had been, right? Like it's, you get the moment sort of Lord of Chaos feels like one moment where we have our generals and our kings, right? But there's still these kids who are put in these positions of power not really knowing what they're doing. Whereas in Knife of Dreams, you have them really settling into their power and being comfortable with their power, in a way that maybe isn't totally complete, but like they do sit comfortably in a lot of what they can do. They are now the gods, not the kings, right? They're the kings with power. And then he sort of comes back and rewrites these childish characters who feel insecure and not comfortable in the power that they have. We've seen them grown to be comfortable in.
Right. They're acting uncertain in ways where we've seen them act certain. They're taking scenarios that they should be able to just breeze through and being like, I don't know what this is.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so I think that's why it's just rough to read and rough to comment on, because it's like, yeah, it's almost only recap in character development.
Right. Though, as we were talking about before we got on recording, the one thing that he does shine on in these 2 chapters is the side characters. A lot of the side character interactions and characterizations and behaviors and interactions are very interesting, believable, enrich the world, enrich the story.
Fail shows a lot of growth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the big ones that he's like he's not comfortable writing the big characters. He's only comfortable at this point writing the small characters.
And so you get this just speech from Matt here in the beginning. And I don't
want you to read it. You don't have to.
I kind of have to. I kind of really want to like.
Okay.
At least
all right.
The first paragraph. I will read one paragraph because there's so much of it. And it goes on for
like 2.5 pages.
Yeah, it's so much.
It's too much.
It's way too much. Women, Matt declared as he rode Pips down the dusty little used road, are like mules, he frowned. Wait, no, goats. Women are like goats, except every flaming one of them thinks she's a horse instead, and a prize racing mare to boot. You understand me, Talmanes?
Pure poetry, Matt.
And like, that could have been the end of it.
If that was the end of it, ranting.
No ranting. We would have been so happy. Then there's a little bit of background. Matt's got 7,000 men with him. We learn later 1,000 have died, which is actually still a pretty high death rate, by the way. 1 in 8.
Against vastly superior odds, though.
Fair. And it's been a week since Tuon left.
Yeah.
Right. And then 2 more pages of Matt going, women are goats. She'll sit down at a game, tell you the rules, punch you, lie about the dice, cheat, steal, blah, 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 blah. And I just, oh my God, it's the part that I've just needed to be edited out. Like, this chapter needed to be edited down so significantly. And this is, and again, it's where Matt is telling you exactly who he is, telling you exactly what his opinions about women are, instead of showing you what his opinions about women are. And not only is he telling you, he's telling you the wrong thing. He's telling you something that he doesn't believe anymore, because we've seen his beliefs and change, and his actions reflect that change.
Yeah. And like Talmanes, Brandon Sanderson through Talmanes tries to frame it as like this is his mood being shitty because he's worried about Tuon. This is a new level of worry because he's husbandly now. But like I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't think that this is like him snapping at Vannon and snapping at Jolene. That yes, but this rant about women being like goats and cheating and etc. is just so like no. This is just not right. This is weird.
Mm. And you can see where it's coming from. It's the Matt not liking Aes Sedai, Matt being weird about getting married, right? But like he has a respect for women that means he would never talk about them this way. It's a weird kind of respect, right? It's like hard to even articulate.
This is not how his disrespect usually comes through.
Yes, exactly. Right. That's a better way of saying it, right? He doesn't have this brand of disrespect.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Talmanes gets to begin to shine in his, expanding Sanderson role in his responses, being like all sardonic and having a covert sense of humor and whatever. Like, it's fine. But there were other ways to make Talmanes comment on Matt's style of humor than 2.5 pages of really weird misogynistic ranting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, something I do like in this chapter, as I said, the side character interactions. Vannon being jealous of the map maker, I think is really cute and really believable. Like that enriches the backdrop of the world for me, that Vannon is threatened by a map maker. And also like I did geography, right? Like that was my degree in college. And like I'm no better at navigating now than I was before I learned like the principles of map design and how to use GIS, right? Like being able to make maps does not make you good at navigating the landscape. Like they tried to make me take surveying classes so that I could learn to navigate. I did not learn those lessons well. Like I passed the classes, but I did not truly internalize the survey skills they were trying to impart because I was in the geography program. So like Vannon's critique of Master Roydell is very correct, and I just like that little bit of world building.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily interpret it as jealousy. I interpreted it as like a legitimate concern of like, the map maker doesn't know where the fuck he is. That's why he makes maps.
Right. Well, Matt interprets it as jealousy, and I believed Matt, which I probably shouldn't have done. That's probably my mistake. But
with Sanderson, you can be a little more believable that he's going to tell you what he's thinking rather than him being wrong. Yeah. One thing I noticed about this area is it reminds me a lot of like Appalachia area, just these rolling mountains where everything looks exactly the same. You're like, which mountain is that? I don't know. It looks like all the other mountains. Like they're old mountains that have worn down over a long time. Isolated communities in between all these like hard to travel over hills are all isolated. And yeah,
weird little communities up in the holler.
I'm hearing when they ride over the hill, the hinners tap, ding, 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 ding. Like it's definitely
right.
Horror themed, middle of nowhere, Appalachia vibes.
Right. Every millennial kid reading the setup to Hinder's Tap is like, well, this is clearly going to go badly. There's no scenario in which the hero rolls up to a weird mountain town and has it go well. Like we've all been trained on millennial media. Like, no, this is going to go south, sideways, pear-shaped.
I also like the way it sort of rolls into the way they went from town to town, inn to inn, and had things happen at the inns where they stayed at. I kind of like that Matt going from town to town and having little incidents at every little town. I like that kind of fantasy genre, right? The like on a boat traveling from island to island, on a spaceship traveling from planet to planet, on a horse traveling from town to town. Like there's so many ways to create this new interaction with a new group of people and forward the plot and forward the interactions in a way that's interesting when you have a group traveling.
Right. And also it's a nice callback to Matt in book 1 that doesn't feel artificial, right? Echoing the, road trip timey-wimey time, the road trip from hell. Like, we've seen Matt doing this before, and it's fun to see him kind of powered up and having an entourage and like all this stuff. This is different than when he traveled before. This is a callback that isn't artificial feeling.
I also like that it's all basically an "Are we there yet?" because they're on the road. Like Matt's like, so what do we do now that we know where we are? And Vannon's like, we keep traveling on the road because
there are 2 directions to go, sir. Like we can go forward and back.
So like after all of that back and forth about like, Matt Baker and Vannon and leading the way, it's like, we're going in this direction, and we'll know when we get there.
Yeah, 2 more hours.
Yeah. Right before sunset.
Right, yeah, for sure.
Because that's what this chapter is setting up Ender's Tap, right? Which doesn't need a whole chapter to set up, right? This is almost a nothing chapter.
I think it's because Sanderson wanted to start writing the Matt Talmanes bromance, because this has a lot of Matt Talmanes bromance, and that continues through Ender's Tap. So I think he wanted to set up the relationship dynamic that he was going to write through Ender's Tap.
Which is not to say he did not invent this. We definitely saw a couple of spots in the earlier books where Talmanes has this sort of dry humor, where he says something sarcastically at Matt, but it's just not to the degree with which Sanderson writes that as a very much buddy comedy back and forth, very much Era 2 Mistborn, right? Where you haven't read it.
I read book 1
of Era 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just didn't feel like finishing the trilogy. It didn't interest me.
But yeah, Wax and Wayne are these, it's this buddy cop. One of them's a little bit sillier.
Yeah, no, there's a line here that I think actually is Sanderson talking about his relationship to Talmanes,
Sure.
as a writer. Earlier in their association, Matt, aka Brandon, had assumed him to be stern, unable to have fun. He was learning better. Talmanes wasn't stern, he was just reserved. I think Sanderson's literally talking about his own writing process, being like, oh yeah, here's a side character that I wrote off as a reader early on. And now as a writer, I'm coming in being like, oh, Talmanes is actually an important side character to describing the Matt space.
And he's been Matt's number 2 for a while, right?
Right.
And so it's
right.
this whole, and he's took over the band when Matt wasn't there. He's basically the commander of the band. Besides, Matt's essentially the mascot. Talmanes is the commander.
Truly, though. Truly. Yeah, lots of men have joined and stayed with the band under Talmanes' leadership, but Matt's branding. But Talmanes is the one actually keeping order in the camp and making decisions and doing all the things that have to be done.
Right. As an example, he's the one bringing in all the money, right? Because he went to the king and worked for them. We saw that whole situation with Egwene, and he's like, I'm going to go work for this king for a while. And when I'm done, I'm going to go take the money and go back to Matt. And that's exactly what he did. And that's why he's puffing on a gold rimmed pipe instead of a normal pipe, because the king gave him that as a gift. He says that later.
Yep. And some Two Rivers Tabak, because, again, the economics of Two Rivers Tabak do not need to be examined closely.
Yeah, there seems to be both a lot of it everywhere and somehow always the last bag.
Always.
I can remember another substance that used to be illegal that I was always told, we just one more bag, that's all we've got.
Though, in fairness to them, I don't think there's been a lot of commerce this year out of the Two Rivers.
Right. I think that's supposed to be the point, is because they were shut off
2 years ago, actually.
2 years ago by the White Cloaks and Patton Fane, because he was trying to keep all the news closed up. Well, he was actually, the White Cloaks closed it. Patton Fane was trying to let the news out because he wanted Rand to know about it.
But yeah, their shipments of tobacco have been interrupted for a minute, so people are running down to the last of their stashes.
Also, it's not really growing, I don't think, right?
Also that, yeah.
It's we're not going to ship anything.
The Two Rivers people have been busy, firing their fields and defending against Trollocs. They have not had the time to do agriculture.
Which is true, kind of an example of everything, right? I kind of think of the Two Rivers Tabak as his little monitor for how's the agriculture doing in the world, and it's we're running out of Two Rivers Tabak, which means we're running out of all of the niceties.
Right, that's your weather vane or bellwether canary in the coal mine, kind of if you don't have the Tabak, then you can assume that everything else is also struggling.
Yeah, there's another little Talmanes joke. Talmanes had spent a few days calling Matt Your Highness until Matt had lost his temper and yelled at the man, which is just this totally, yes, Your Highness. And he's like, stop it. Just a great way to poke at him. Yeah. And him being why couldn't luck have helped him avoid being Prince of the Ravens? It's dude, that's the luck made you a prince. Most people have to go to a genie and wish to be a prince. You just got lucked into it. Literally.
He's but I don't want it. It's shut up. Quit your whining. You're in charge of an empire. Act like it. Use your power.
I'm surprised they don't stick him up on the Ashendari and just wave him around like a flag.
I know, right? He thinks about Tuon a bit. Contrasting both worrying about her safety as his wife and also worrying about her sending assassins after him because, being Empire.
Worrying about his safety as her wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Her husband, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. There's two sides to that. There's the human side and there's the political side. And he's worrying about both. And Talmanes is you are so mooning after her. And Matt's I'm in denial. And we do that for a while.
Oh God, yeah, back and forth. I'm mooning after. No, I'm not. I'm just concerned. Okay, but then you're snapping at everybody and have a temper and constantly talking about her. So,
And then there's the gambling thing. That where he's like, I'm gonna go gambling, and Talmanes is like, you're gonna be talking about that in your sleep, and it's
basically because he used to say like, I don't want to get married because I don't want to stop gambling, drinking, and whoring, and like he's like, well, I guess I can't whore anymore.
but I'm not gonna stop
But
gambling.
I'm not gonna stop gambling and drinking because he said that all the time, right? Where it's like, and she can't stop me from doing the two things I actually want to do, but I'm definitely not gonna. He's not a cheater.
No, he's not. He is loyal to that concept. I do like when Talmanes is like, you're not gonna go soft, Matt. You might go boring.
That was a good line. That was a really good line. You won't go soft because you're married. Good, that was settled. You might go boring though.
All right, that's it. And then he makes it's not really a fateful decision to go to Hinderstap and gamble because they were gonna do that anyway, but that feels like the moment that the Hinderstap thing becomes locked in because he has made this snap decision, and anytime Matt makes a snap decision, there's reasons why it's a snap decision,
Honestly, would have liked it to have some dice in his head for this one.
The lack of dice is weird. And Matt does comment on the lack of dice being weird. So there's at least that level of self-awareness, but it is weird.
I do think that the dice very much were leading up to him becoming Prince of the Ravens, right? That was this fated thing that a lot of the dice rolling was him marrying Tuon, getting together with Tuon, buying the razor, wooing her, and it seems like fate kind of was like, okay, done. That's it. That's all I really need to indicate to you. Like, it was more about the battles in the beginning, and now it's like about Tuon, and now I'm just like, you're good enough. Peace out. See you later.
And he's fine. He's totally fine. Though I do wonder, and he tells Vannon, we're gonna go to this hint, because Vannon comes up and says, oh, I figured out which mountain it is, and there's a town ahead. It's called Hinderstap. And Matt says, I'm not taking the whole band in. I don't want 7,000 soldiers running amok in this village. And I do wonder how things would have gone if he had 7,000 soldiers in the village when it went ballistic that night. Like, they would have tried to fight in a different way, and maybe more of them would have gotten killed and sucked into it. Like, Hinderstap could have been a very different experience with 7,000 cavalry.
Well, I think with 7,000 cavalry, the town would have been they would have attacked the cavalry, and the cavalry would have just run them down. Like, it would have been sudden, but I do think that that many, because I think it was a town of a couple hundred people, right? I don't think you're talking thousands of people in this town. This is a small town. So then you're talking odds of 10-1,
Right, but the thing where they fight unpredictably and stuff, and I wonder if a legion would have relied too much on structure and then been overwhelmed, and even if a bunch of them got away, a bunch of them would have died and been trapped there, and how would that have changed Hinderstap to have a few hundred mounted cavalry just so we're stuck here now,
or imagine all of them.
Or all of them, right?
Imagine something happens where it just maybe the ones that die rise up that night, right? And so then it becomes a spreading zombie plague type situation, right? Where Matt's the only one who escapes, and his entire army of 7,000 is stuck in Hinderstap, living over and over again. And then that scene in the final battle where they are defending a thing and they come back is holy shit, this is the same 7,000 troops. The Band of the Red Hand is just an undying force.
Right. Yeah. I just there's so many ways this could have gone if, depending on the size of the party he takes in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. Or just a core group of fighters who always lead the battle and who die every time. And they just gateway them to the battle every single day.
I mean, the Hinderstap move at the end is very effective, but it would have been more effective if the band had somehow gotten sucked into it.
I mean, I think some of them did. It seems like some of the band did sacrifice themselves to stay in the town, because some of the band comes back through the gateway, I feel who were in there the first day.
I think some of them choose to go back later. I don't think it happens in this. Nobody dies in this.
No, not in this chapter. No, but I do think before the last battle, it seems like some of them
go back on purpose. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Some of them deliberately choose to put themselves in Hinderstap so they can make the fighting force that much more effective. That rings a bell, but it's something that happens off screen. So Also, we've got the Aes Sedai inserting themselves into the party. It's very much like everyone with plot armor to the front. We're going to go in and have a plot where no one dies. We think about the various Aes Sedai, but none of it's really super relevant because we know who they are and what their motivations are. There's a really fun line here where Matt's thinking about the Aes Sedai's interactions where Aes Sedai didn't squabble. He'd gotten talking to once for calling their discussions squabbles. Never mind that Matt had sisters and knew what a good squabble sounded like. I do like that commentary.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then we have this long interaction where Matt very rudely dresses Jolene down by doing the math about how many horses they would need in order to leave and go faster. And
Oh, yeah, that whole thing.
And it's just, it's too many paragraphs of really grouchy nothing of intrigue.
Which just makes me think that it's a decently clever way of Matt not wanting the Aes Sedai to leave. Him being like, I'd do anything to get rid of these Aes Sedai. But the second they're like, okay, all you got to do is give us 24 horses and some grain. He's like, well, that wouldn't work. I need you to stay around. Like, he knows the value that the Aes Sedai are playing. This is a good job of him saying he doesn't want the Aes Sedai around, but actually does a lot of work to keep them there. It just goes on way too long. It's just way too long.
So long.
Yeah.
So long. And again, Talmanes comments, this is kind of out of character for you. You must be really worried. But, like, I don't think we needed that many paragraphs to point that out.
Right. Some Van and Dread evidence. He doesn't like being interrogated by Aes Sedai. Looks like he'd rather have been discovered stealing horses on his way to execution. I think any Forsaken would feel that way. No respect for them, treats them just like anyone else. And good man, that Van, and he treats Aes Sedai just like anyone else. And then he then covers it up. So
yeah, then he wilts. Under the pressure
Yeah.
because he's just a regular guy.
I like my theory. I'm sticking with it.
Your theory's fine.
I know
It's
it's
great.
wrong. I know it's
It's
wrong.
great.
It's fine. It's a joke theory. Don't come at me.
It's fine. And then Matt is like, I'm going to play a joke on the town and win all the food for free. And it's going to be real clever. And Talmanes is an enabler who just says, wee, this will be fun. And that's the end of the chapter.
Let's see. Yeah. He's going to have to make good on his promise to Tom. The Tower of Genji would just have to wait a few more weeks. I always think of that of like, oh yeah, just let Moraine get tortured a few more weeks. Right? No big deal.
Insulting to Moraine. Also, like, I love that Oliver is like very seriously explaining his strategies to Noel about how to get into the Tower of Genji, and Noel is just like taking him really seriously, and it's very cute.
Yeah. No, that's a very cute, like, grandfather young boy interaction where the young kid's just rattling on 1,000 miles a minute, and the old man wants nothing more than to listen because it's like, yeah, that's kind of the best thing in life.
Basically, Noel is getting a little honorary grandson energy, while he hangs out with the band before he goes out in a blaze of glory, and he's enjoying it. He's fine with Oliver just talking his ear off.
Okay. No. Okay. I think that's all I had in that chapter. Food's getting scarce. All these things we touched on over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. The reason why they go to Hinderstep is not just to satisfy Matt's desire to gamble. It's also to try to resupply because 7,000 men need food.
Yep. And he's like, no matter how much food I get, any amount helps, basically. As we're traveling every day, even if we just pick up, if I can feed half the army for one meal for one day, that's one more, half day I can get further along the road without having to restock or resupply majorly. So every little bit counts.
Yeah. Good philosophy in life yep. There you go. Lots of wisdom in this chapter.
Yeah, sure. That's one way to put it. Wisdom. God, Matt. It's just.
Yeah, so from one eye-rolling character to the next, you want to go to Embers and Ash.
Embers and Ash. And our symbol's the wolf, because this is a Perrin chapter. What was the symbol of the last one?
Dice, because it was a Matt chapter.
Dice, it was a Matt chapter. Wow, just really literal here, aren't we? Just because there's nothing else going on. There's nothing, they're not really interacting with any other characters. They're not in Teleron Riyadh. There's no Dark Friends. There's no Forsaken. It's just... Rough. Embers and ash. Perrin opened his eyes and found himself hanging in the air. He felt a spike of terror floundering in the sky. Black clouds boiled overhead, dark and ominous. Below, a plain of wild brown grasses rolled in the wind. No sign of humans, no tents, no roads, not even any footprints. Perrin wasn't falling. He just hung there. He waved his arms reflexively, as if to swim, panicking as his mind trying to make sense of the disorientation. The wolf dream, he thought. I'm in the wolf dream. I went to sleep hoping to come here. He forced himself to breathe in and out and still his flailing, though it was difficult to be calm while hanging hundreds of feet up in the sky. Suddenly, a gray-furred form shot past him, leaping through the air. The wolf soared down to the field below, landing easily. Hopper! I'll end with Hopper! Because yay, Hopper!
Yeah, we like Hopper.
We like Hopper. Mm-hmm. And so this is the part where I'm just like, okay, Perrin hunted Slayer in the wolf dream. He teleported, he stepped, he made himself, blend in with the background. He made himself not sound like anything. He's made arrows appear and disappear. This like getting stuck up in the air and don't know what I'm doing and flailing and panicking, being in Talmanes Riyadh is so out of character for Perrin, and so book 3, 4 Perrin maybe. Really pre battle of the Two Rivers, because that's when he takes down.
Yeah, but obviously he hasn't taken Slayer down permanently. He has to level up even harder before that can be done. But yeah, he has shown himself proficient in the dream. He should not be finding this so disorienting.
Right. Like, and this is again where I feel like Sanderson's starting over. He's like, I'm going to take him through my own little personal journey from where he was in book 1 to where I want him to be, and it's going to happen pretty quickly. But yeah, it's like grow from where they are instead of where they used to be. And I think it just comes back to the fact that he was a fan, but he was a fan who probably read the first books a lot more than he read the last few books.
Right, which, fair.
We all did, right?
Right.
Because they were out for 20 years, while the last ones were only out for a couple of years, right? So it makes sense, but to me, it feels like he didn't do quite a good enough job of upgrading his mental image of these characters before sitting down and writing this book.
Yep. Yeah, and he's retreading ground with Hopper he's gone over before, like, I need control, I need to know what I'm doing, but I need to not also follow any of your instructions whatsoever. Hopper's like, here is literally step 1. Perrin's like, well, I can't do that, but I do need my degree.
Right.
I can't do any of the homework. I can't do any of the field work. I won't come to a single class, but I do need you to give me a degree with full honors. And Hopper's like, that's not how it works.
I need to get the certification to do the job, right? And so it's like, yeah, but the certification means you know how to do certain things, and that's why you can do the job. And if you don't know how to do those things, the certification doesn't mean anything.
Right. Yeah. And I do like Hopper's critique that men are too obsessed with control. I do think it's definitely a human failing is being obsessed with control. And we could do a lot more being feral and wolf-like in our appreciation of nature. But we don't need pages upon pages to get us to that conclusion.
My whole job is fixing machines that have certain parameters that fall what we call out of control. So my whole job really is bringing machines back into control. So yes, as humans, we are a little obsessed with control.
Yeah, what Carl Sagan called the will to order. It's one of our greatest strengths and our greatest weaknesses.
Couple of interesting things. The stormy cloud in Talmanes Riyadh that seems to really be... I love the idea that Talmanes Riyadh somehow is the Dark One's prison, right? It's the border between our reality and his reality, and like, even though there's a hole drilled in it, it still exists the whole time, and then all that kind of stuff. But whatever your interpretation of it is, that storm seems to represent Rand's... I don't want to call it madness, because the madness is Louis Theron's voice in his head. His nihilism.
Right, his state of being.
Right. And that's reinforced when Hopper says, if it comes, first of all, which always love the we come, it comes, like the yeah. It comes, Popper agreed. If Shadow Killer falls to the storm, all will sleep forever. If he lives, then we will hunt together, you and us. Which to me, that to me is such a definitive statement about the nature of the last battle and what's going to happen between then and now. If Shadow Killer falls to the storm being his own nihilism, if on the top of the mountain he destroys the earth, all will sleep forever. That's the end of the wheel. If he lives, if he doesn't destroy the wheel, we hunt together. We go to the last battle. We go to the last hunt. And then we determine how good the future is going to be, right? Because at that point, then you determine whether you get to live the future enslaved by Forsaken, overrun by Trollocs. Yeah, the Dark One's locked away, but you're going to have a bad time. Or you're going to have a golden age and a resurrection and a new, Age of Legends, Age 4, whatever you want to call it. And I do think that, like, the last battle has more to do with how good the fourth age is going to be and less to do with whether or not the Dark One's going to win the last battle. The Dark One lost the last battle when Rand didn't destroy the world in Veins of Gold.
Yeah, I'm nodding. And again, it's the wolf that is able to easily cut to the heart of the matter, and not a human who feels the need to control and micromanage and all of that. A wolf's just like, oh, this is what it is. Like, clearly.
Yeah. He's like, this is the choice he has to make. He either falls to the storm and ends the world, or we get to continue to fight. Right? And that's the whole thing about fantasy is and a happily ever after is it can only ever promise that you get to continue to fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's never the end of the fight. It's just more life.
Right. Yeah, because that's kind of how life is.
Right.
Life is struggle and change.
And the whole point is, like, you get a chance to love again because love makes everything else worth it.
Right. Yeah, I noticed too, like, not just the storm, but also like the grass is too dry and the air smells kind of stale. And it's just like everything about because like when Egwene first shows up, she's like, this meadow is perfect. There's butterflies, the humidity is correct, the grass is the right height, like everything's perfect. And now here he is and everything's just a little bit off from perfect. Like the whole dream is getting a little off. And I like that detail. And then, yeah, he tries to do stupid Perrin things in the dream and Hopper boots him out because he's still not learning correctly. And that's the end of the POV.
The only other thing is, again, this gets reiterated so many times, but here Brandon, again, says it right out, where he says, throwing away the axe had made a difference. The axe and the hammer were different weapons. One could be used only for killing, while the other gave him a choice. And that's sort of the choice is the important part, right? The balance, the choice, the ability to choose darkness and light as opposed to... And I think the parallel is always the sword and the spear, right? Why did the Aiel still not pick up a sword and do the spear? Because the spear is a hunting device. You can hunt animals with it. So it can be productive. The sword, you're not hunting animals with the sword. It's only got one purpose, which is killing people.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, again, it's been belabored upon so many times, and it will be again that, yeah, it's easy to forget. Maybe we should mention it. Every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, again, I like it when it's sort of compacted, not like it, but I will point it out when the whole lesson that we've been shown over and over again gets written down in a 2-sentence little paragraph by Brandon, because he does love to do that. Yeah, so then I think, yeah, he does that thing where he's trying to get stronger, so he pulls himself into Tel'aran'rhiod too strongly, and too strongly means he's leaving, he's creating a separation between his spirit and his body could die. So he has to learn how to be strong in Tel'aran'rhiod without pulling himself into Tel'aran'rhiod. Kind of think of like holding an egg without crushing it, right?
Exactly, totally. Except in this case, it's like his connection between his soul and his body.
Right. Yeah. He's with one hand trying to flex in Tel'aran'rhiod and the other hand holding that connection. And like if he flexes both of them at the same rate, you have to learn to do one. It's like turning your head when you're driving without turning the wheel.
Yeah.
Like you have to learn how to do that or else you're going to do some damage.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And Hopper's like, you need to think about that a little bit more before we can have a lesson. So
yeah, you're going to do what I say or I'm not going to teach you because you're going to crash the car into the, barrier of the freeway.
Right. And then we switch to Fail POV, which is actually a good POV.
Favorite bit of writing in both of these chapters is the Fail section right here. Really well done. Showing a little more context around why she was planning an argument that would pull his secrets from him, right? Like this idea of like, she's not arguing just to be angry, but to like, she wants to find things out. She wants to communicate. And it's just their way of communicating is by sparking arguments. And in the yelling at each other, she gets information. Well, it reminds me a little bit of the Buffy musical where they sing relevant information to each other, and that's how they find out their deepest, darkest secrets, is because they're stuck singing them in this emotional number.
That sounds intense.
It's funny because I had a friend who skipped the musical. He was like, I don't really think it's just a musical episode. It's not really relevant. The problem is so many secrets are revealed, and so because they have to sing their emotions, and so they reveal things they've been hiding from each other for a season and a half at this point. And so all the relationships change after the musical. And so if you skip that episode, you're like, what? Why are they? I don't understand. Why are they treating each other? Why are they having these arguments? I don't get it. So, yeah, I'm sorry about the tangent, but yeah.
Don't apologize for tangents on this podcast.
I'm sorry for apologizing. What am I thinking? It's been, like I said, I'm a little off today.
Fael's thinking about how it's been a week since they've left Malden, and her and Perrin are working on reconnecting. They still have some more reconnecting to figure out, but they've been remembering some very important reasons why they got married. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Brandon Sanderson, you're so explicit and naughty. Wow.
Right, yeah. She banged the shit out of him. She's like...
Yeah, she rode him into the sunset and is like, did I not tire him out enough?
Right, yeah. There's a couple of lines there where you're just like, God damn. There's one moment where he says, you sounded, I don't know, burn it, woman, you sounded jealous, which you can definitely substitute smelled.
Right, yeah. So he wakes up from being kicked out of the dream by Hopper and immediately goes into trying to be like, I didn't sleep with Berylyn. And Fael, they have the whole it's more communication than they've had about this in a long time. It is nice that he does at least, do that little substitution of you sound jealous. Yeah. He is attempting to talk to her about the things he's smelling from her. He's attempting it. He's making an attempt. An attempt is being made, and it doesn't go horribly. It doesn't resolve anything, but it doesn't blow up, so that's good.
No, and I love her. She trusts him because she's like, Berylyn does not have the skill to deal with you. There's no I had to seduce you, marry you, basically tie you up in order to get
no, what was it? What was the it's so funny.
It took me the better part of a year.
Not to mention considerable trouble to seduce you, and then it only worked because there was a marriage involved.
I'm like, yeah, I've known people like that.
I also love the part where the implication that if Berylyn was doing it just to sleep with you, look what all of these things I had to do to get to sleep with you. I had to marry you to get to sleep with you.
Right.
Because you know that she married him for so much more than lust reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cute. I like the banter there. Even though I hate the subject material, I do like the banter.
But I think that it's important to show that married couples are lustful for each other, right? It's better than boomer humor, my wife sucks and I don't want to go home to her or whatever.
Yeah.
I really love that there is this, that is, no characters downplay their partners in this series. No character diminishes their partner, except maybe a dark friend.
Well, that's different.
Yeah. And usually they're doing it because to show they're better than everybody else. But I really like that that's not what's going on here. There's never any of this oh my God, I can't believe my wife is such a...
There's a bit of that in the Boomers in world. Right? Some of the parent generation. Exactly. Some of the in-world boomers are a little bit like that.
Well, that's because Senbui just sucks. His wife is like, my husband sucks. And everyone's like, mm-hmm.
Oh, and then there's the one misogynist captain. You can't forget the one misogynist in all of Randland.
Who doesn't trust women. I think he's just repressed and gay. That's
honestly, that's probably what's going on. But there's a lot of talking down on the institution of marriage, Matt being like, I don't want to get married. But none of the married couples take that energy out on each other, and that is nice.
I guess Val and Luca, maybe, with Lucille, might be the closest.
Even then, it seems like they have something going on.
Which I don't get. I do not get what kind of dynamic he's trying to create there, because it seems like he settled for her and she doesn't like him very much, but they're somehow happily married. And I'm just like, what?
No, I thought that she was I think what went on there was she was super jealous of Nynaeve for having caught his eye.
And it's but jealousy is the only reason she went after him.
But no, she's doting on him. She seems to like him.
Okay.
She has the whole like, no, Matt describes her as being very doting on him and very sweet on him. They have something going on. Also, they've only been married for like 6 months at that point. So, you know, entrenched tiredness has not yet had a chance to set in.
Fair enough. Fail jokes about this communication means I won't have any secrets left. And he's like, I doubt that. And I'm like, yeah, didn't you just kill a man in hiding? Like, Perrin's then later is like, I wonder what happened to Missima.
Yeah. It's like, I think Fail's secret keeping abilities are just fine.
Just fine. She's got some secrets. No one knows what happened. She's like, do you know what happened to Missima? No, nobody seems to know what happened to Missima. Like, you stabbed him in the face. Like,
yeah,
repeatedly.
Literally. And Perrin doesn't smell a lie at all. It's wild.
Well, yeah, Jesus Christ. How convenient. Well, he smells emotions, and she doesn't feel guilty about lying at all.
Right. She doesn't feel guilty about killing him. None of that. Yeah.
No. I love this line. She had spent less than 2 months as a captive, but it had seemed like years.
Fourth wall shattering sound.
That's Brandon going, yes, I know how long it felt like she was a prisoner, because it was 3 books that came out. It was nearly a decade of
but
in
also,
real time.
Reality check, in world, it was only 2 months. It's good to just ground us in it. It felt like years, but it was not years in terms of the in-world timeline.
Mm-hmm. So no matter how much the characters changed, it was only 2 months. And so they can't change that much.
Right, exactly. And then she goes on a long, thoughtful thing, which I think actually does merit iteration, because she's not reiterating the same point over and over again. She actually takes a long, thoughtful exploration through the fact that she matured a lot. She was a brat who was not able to think beyond her own nose, and Malden was a profound growing up experience. And she has very interesting thoughts about it. I like it.
I agree. I think it's worth reading. It's definitely her saying, you know, I cringe at some of the things I used to do, which, like, honestly, if you're not cringing at things you used to do, you're not growing up. You're not getting older. You're not maturing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, and I think for Fail, and again, it's a bit of fourth wall breaking where Sanderson says, yeah, that behavior was very childish and it was written to be childish, and now we've grown beyond that.
Yeah. And also, I love the part where, like, she doesn't even remember specifically what had set her off about, like, being mad at Perrin. That one time she made him go through the ways, like, we remember.
Yeah.
We, the audience, we've been arguing about it for years. But for her, it was such a non-issue because she was being so childish that she doesn't even remember the specifics. And, like, that adds depth to her shallowness at the time, if that makes sense.
Right. That it was such a large reaction over something that in the end doesn't even matter.
Yeah, at all.
In the end, it doesn't even matter.
And yeah, so then her and Perrin talk about infidelity in both of their contexts. And she thinks about Roland, right? This is kind of, you know, we're heading towards the Roland burial thing. And she thinks about how the Brotherless had asked for much, but demanded nothing. And how that complicates her feelings with having them killed with Perrin, but also, like, there was no alternative except having them get killed by Perrin. The whole conflict was happening and she shouted, and that distracted him. And, you know, we're building up to the funeral guilt. She's pondering over it before she gets to exit the tent. And she manages to talk Perrin back to sleep, basically, so that way she can go and do a ritual to actually discharge these feelings of guilt and complication around Roland that she's having. Oh, yeah. Perrin wonders what Rand will think of how the Missima mission completely failed, which I don't think they ever talk about it, which is sort of a disappointment.
No, I mean, yeah, Rand has completely forgotten about it at this point. He's just like, Perrin, I need you back. Where the fuck you been? Like, right. Bro.
Like dealing with your zealot. I'm sorry, I'm doing my job.
Like, it wasn't supposed to be that complicated. Like, just bring him to me so I can tell him to stop screwing around. And it's like, but by the time he would deliver the message, it was too late. Like, Perrin ended the threat. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. It's over. It's whatever.
Bane and Chiad are staying Guy Shine because they got taken legitimately.
Right, yeah. So Fail finally gets Perrin to go to sleep and leaves the tent. And Bane and Chiad are helping her organize this little gathering with the others because the guy's shinitude of the others was really messed up. And so they're like willing to bend their own honor a little bit to acknowledge that part of their lives and like help out. But yes, they are keeping White on because they were taken legitimately by Aiel in battle, and they will serve their year in a day, which conveniently now is owed to Gaul, which makes for a very fun situation.
Because in battle, he killed 12 people, right? So, I mean, we're definitely setting Gaul up to be much more badass. He used to be sort of mid-level Aiel warrior, but like he's definitely gotten a promotion hanging out with Perrin, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
And then when we see him later in the World of Dreams, he's super badass, right? So Gaul definitely has gotten some badass points here. And going into Malden, killing 12 other warriors, right? Which is just insane. Both of which happen to be the owners of Bane and Chiad.
Right. And he was really only trying to get Chiad's
right.
owner.
Right.
But he accidentally got Bane's too. And Chiad is like, well, I guess I'm going to have to make a bridal wreath for him now that I can torture him more in a marriage than out of one.
But yeah, it's more. And they talk, God, it's the foreshadowing in all the earlier books where they're like, oh, the best way to become someone's, betrothed is basically become guy shine to them. And a year later, sure enough, the bridal wreath is going to be laid at their feet. And like, that's exactly what's happening here, right? Like and yeah, I like the way the symmetry of it. I like the way it's kind of, they set it up, I feel like, in a way that forces Gaul to not necessarily have the power over them, even though he has power over them, right? Like the weird way honor works, it's like the sub has more power over the dom in this situation. The guy Shine has like, because they're like doing all these things for him, and he's like, "Oh my God, when I'm marrying you, I'm gonna owe you so much. you're gonna be like the servant who has all my secrets and can throw it in my face." And like, yeah, the way she's getting to know him in all his private moments, like it would be rough. It would be rough to have your like the woman you wanted to court be a servant.
It seems like a pretty weird dynamic.
Yeah.
To start out with. Only the Aiel could pull it off.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know that they are. And the whole thing where Chiad's like, well, I guess he's tried so hard to get my attention, I'm going to have to marry him, is like not my favorite reason to marry someone.
But I think she's just fronting on that. I think she's actually very impressed with all the things he's done and like all the attention he's given. And
right, but she's also making sure that his marriage to her is not going to be what he wanted. So it's just like the taming of the shrew energy will never run out in this dynamic. And on the one hand, it's funny, and on the other hand, it makes me kind of bummed out for Gaul. But whatever, not my circus, not my monkeys. They're going to be fun and comedic for the rest of the books, and Gaul is a badass who can handle it. So it's fine.
I have very little to say about the funeral.
Okay, so the funeral is they each have a token of the person that they were kept captive by and or killed. They've been retrieved by others from the battlefield, so they can burn these items and say a few words and kind of just have closure on those relationships.
It's a sad scene. All of these women struggle with what they had to do.
Yeah, especially the ones who were directly involved in the killing of the men in question. Like the maiden who died and one of the men, they just fell in the battle in general. But two of the others died because of actions taken by people in this party, like literally stabbing their friends in the back, right? Like there's a lot of complicated feelings. And I do think that this was a necessary ritual, like as much as we have complicated feelings about all the shit that went down with Roland and the Brotherless, like the emotional attachments these characters created was very real, and you do need to respect the abrupt and ragged edge of how it ended.
But I also do think Jordan would never have had a funeral like this.
He would have had something.
He would have had something, but it would have been like an internal thought and like very much internalized guilt. They would never, I don't think they would go do this public display.
It's not public. It's a private event. It's just for the people that the ritual is for.
Sorry, public should be. But it's not like she's not doing it by herself, right?
Which honestly, I think you're super right. Jordan would have had the most toxic expression of that.
Exactly,
which is just an internal resolution.
Absolutely.
The fact that they do it in a group makes it actually have some emotional closure, and the characters are not going to be traumatized by this in the same way moving forward because they got together, held each other, said words in each other's presence. Like, it's an actual ritual.
And what a waste of like good trauma. Like, really? Come on.
Okay, writer brain. I think we've had enough trauma from this plot line. I'm happy to put a bow on it and set it aside neatly.
There's what is with the brotherless in Perrin's camp? How did he get into Perrin's camp? Was he like a refugee from?
This guy Shine
okay.
to Sulin.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we talked about this in the last episode, that Perrin absorbs a lot of Aiel from his captive enemies because he had Aiel taking captives in the battle, and so he ends up with a lot of Gaisha and Aiel like in his ranks ultimately. And it's a mention of Sulin. Sulin's not actually doing anything, but she is the person who captured this guy, apparently, and has him. So good for her. She's here. She's kicking ass.
Fael does think about how the world's a sadder place for the necessity of killing these men. I kind of think about, like, you know who made it necessary? Galena. Because if she had passed on the message like she said she was going to, they could have been hidden away in a safe place where they could have been approached, not in the middle of a battle.
Yeah.
And the men wouldn't have had to be killed. They could have even come with them as allies.
Right? Yeah, they totally could have happened. But no, a dark friend had to do dark friendy things and make things worse without even knowing exactly what she was making worse.
That's really, I lay these deaths at Galena's feet. I think that they, like, if they'd been hiding up where Perrin had told them to at the time, instead of obviously trapped in a burning building and having just been pulled out, right? They could have been there, spears put away, and Perrin could have approached them peacefully under a flag of truce.
Right. Yeah, Roland might have not even been there. He might have been off doing other stuff because he's like, oh, you're up in the tower, you'll be fine. I'm going to go to the front lines, and gotten killed completely off screen without any of this baggage. Yeah, I do like that she reflects on her father's wisdom about war here, like that sometimes you had to kill people you liked just because you met them on the wrong side of the battlefield. Like the fact that she's got that general voice in her head, able to give her the like coping mechanism to be like, sometimes the world is a really sad, shitty place where there's no good choices and you just have to live with that. You know, she's not inventing that on her own. She got that from her dad. I like that.
Yeah. And that kind of brings, and then sort of end the POV with, I think Roland actually loved me, she said, which is kind of, it's just sad.
Yeah. And then we get this beautiful Saldean proverb. The past was a field of embers and ash, the remnants of the fire that was the present. Like, that's bleak and beautiful and just so Borderlander stoic.
And the title.
And the title, yes. A little poetic. The title actually got a little poetic. It was like riffing out of a proverb. You know, it's not literally a description of you know, whatever.
But just, you know, talking about funerals and death and stuff like that.
And it's a funeral pyre. Yeah. I mean, they literally did a burning ceremony. So, yeah. And I don't know if Roland actually loved her. I don't know if she could determine that. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's the closure that I needed from her. But it's the closure she has. So there it is.
He loved his captive so much.
Yeah, I don't know if you can love someone that you're holding captive. I don't know if that's a thing.
Mm-hmm. But the whole point is he was planning to set her free because he was like, holding you captive is wrong. I need to not be doing that because I love you.
And that's what all of the four that are being honored were kind of more or less in that direction. And that's why we can say, oh, they were some of the good ones. They weren't quite Shido, right? They were brotherless, and that is a meaningful distinction.
And we get that distinction with one of the women who says, I'm just going to go sleep. You know, basically, I'm looking for another brotherless because, like, that model is something that I like. You know, I like men who work on rigs, I guess, big rigs, something like that.
Yeah, I find her whole, like, I'm just going to go sleep with another brotherless is a, like, he shares the same political affiliation as your ex. That doesn't seem like a good enough basis, but okay.
I mean, maybe it's a minimum, you know?
Clearly a more sex-motivated person than I am.
I think it's more, what I would say is more of a trauma response and looking for safety.
Yeah. Which, I mean, they've been through a lot. Who am I to say what coping strategies are correct? As long as it's between consenting adults, whatever. You get your therapy where you get it.
And that flashes back to Perrin, who, of course, wakes up and goes, yep, Fael snuck out. Like, she thinks she's all sneaky about it. And he's like, there she goes again. But, of course, he's dumb and is like, just going to the bathroom.
Well, you know how much girls have to pee.
Trust me, I do. No, it's about almost as much as I do. I have a tiny bladder. Also, I drink a lot of tea. In case you haven't, you never have to stop the recording to go pee. I always do.
I'm a chronically dehydrated person, and it's not healthy. And yeah, he reiterates yet again that he needs to decide to make a decision about being decisive, and he feels very sure about that.
The more he thought about it, the more determined he grew. Instead of making decisions, he'd avoided them. And then the decision to face his problems brought him a measure of peace. But your problem is avoiding the decisions, so you roll over and go to bed. Now that it's very tangled logic.
Perrin is very much thinking like he's in book 2. And afraid of everything and confused of everything and naive and being manipulated by Moraine's like most mild of reprimands. Like, this is not book 12 Perrin. It just isn't.
No, because like he's dealt with the fact that he's like, well, I've led this group of people together. It doesn't matter that whatever their allegiances are, I'm going to put them together to form one front. We're going to kick ass. Like, I don't know. It's just that I don't even know how to articulate what I'm frustrated with about this, because it doesn't feel like the Perrin that went through Malden.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It feels like the Perrin that decided to get engaged to Fael, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is the Perrin who just discovered his family died, right?
Yeah. Yeah, very much.
Like, this is him right after, like maybe even right before the Battle of the Two Rivers, when he's questioning why are people following my advice? Why are people listening to me? I don't get it. Like, I need to make a decision to be a leader in order to tell them all to go back to the Two Rivers and fight the Trollocs as a unified force, right? Like, that's the level of Perrin we're dealing with here. So, yeah, and I mean, I guess it's possible for any writer to do it, but it just feels very stark. And it feels like Brandon Sanderson did it on a bunch of characters. With Rand, we were almost saying he went too far forward, though, that he did a after Veins of Gold Rand scene.
It's a real mixed bag, herky-jerky, fits and starts kind of thing that Brandon is powering through in this first book.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm so glad he did it. I'm so glad it's done. I'm so glad we get this to end. But podcasting through it, I'm seeing the differences. Because that's what we're doing. We're picking it apart. We're picking out the little tiny bits. And it's very hard not to amplify the differences when you're picking it apart like this.
Yeah. His writing does not hold up to the same level of scrutiny, which kind of reminds me about how I've been feeling about the show. It's like, I can't pick the show apart like I picked the books apart and have a good time. I can't pick Sanderson's books apart like I picked Jordan's books apart and have the same time. Like, they're just so different that the level of nitpicking has to be calibrated differently.
Mm-hmm. To me, it's the difference between a print and a painting.
Sure. Yeah.
From a distance, it looks very, very similar. You really can't tell a difference. It looks good, right? But you get up close, one is just ink printed 2D on a poster with a certain amount of digital information loss, right? Whereas a painting, you're seeing the strokes, you're seeing the brush strokes, you're seeing the physicalness of the painting, you're seeing the thickness of it, you're seeing the colors the way they're supposed to be, and you can really see the technique that goes into crafting that and how those images relate to each other. Whereas with the printed thing, this is the done product and I can see the done product, but I can't really talk about how it was painted.
Right. Yeah. And each of those things has their own purpose and their own audience and their own application, and it's not necessarily that one's better than the other, but one is significantly more than the other.
And I have to go back and be like, when I read these for the first time, they were in a lot of ways a breath of fresh air, because Jordan had gone over and over some of these same areas that to make forward progress in a way that, and have these things spelled out, felt very refresh, it was like the thoughts that I had were confirmed in the text, right? The suspicions that I had were laid out, and that felt really good the first time I read it. Now going back, I'm like, well, yeah, now you're laying out everything that I was suspecting, and I don't need to really suspect it anymore. It's just there in black and white. So it's funny that I've had a very different experience. I feel like podcasting through it than reading it.
Yeah, big time. And I definitely feel like the wildly variable lengths of our episodes prove that we are struggling to correctly calibrate what we're doing.
Well, but I think that's part of it. But I also think it's the wildly varying quality of these chapters. Some of them are really good and drive plot forward and really, are obvious that these characters are doing good things, especially around like Egwene and somewhat around Rand, I mean. But some of these other characters, it's clear that he's just floundering and writing them in place just to almost do character studies on them before he starts moving forward with them.
So we'll get through it, but it's a weird experience.
It's a very weird experience to podcast through. Yeah. But yeah, with that being said, I think that's all we have to say about those two chapters.
Yeah, at less than an hour and a half. Less than an hour and 15 minutes. We got through 2 chapters. That was, yeah. Whereas the episode I'm currently editing for release in 2 days is like 2 hours long. So,
right.
Again, we're really struggling to keep an even pace here. But, oh well.
I think that's fine. I don't think it's an even pace has to be the most important thing. Because I think the story is a little herky-jerky at this point.
Yep. No, that makes sense. But yeah, that's all we got. So everyone stay tuned for more exciting chapter coverage.
No, and there will be actually the next chapter really exciting, right? The next chapter is Sumrog getting out and like Brand embracing.
Ooh, the last that could be done.
Could be done. And we're doing the chapter after that one too, because it's more of like it's Codswain sort of wrapping up and hanging out.
Just a few pages. Wow, that's really short.
So we're doing two next time, but that's one of them's going to be pretty meaty at least.
Yeah.
And the other one just looks like it's a wrap up of it. So
yeah, then we got Gawain and Shiriam. And then we got Avienda going. Okay, yeah.
And Hinder's Tap is coming. And once we hit Hinder's Tap, the rest of the book is like pretty meaty. There's a lot of really exciting. Yeah, the Sanderlanche happens, right? And that's the other thing about Sanderson is right. This is something that's very much. His books start off pretty slow. He writes a lot and only makes 1 or 2 points in his early chapters. And then a lot of it comes together at the end, in a way that's pretty cool and exciting. And he really does Sanderlanche this book.
We'll get there, but yeah, for now, that's all we got. So let's turn recording off.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Please rate and review us on your podcast app, and consider supporting us on Patreon for ad-free episodes. What Spoilers is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.